You ever get the feeling some of our political journalists don't actually want answers, they just want a confession? Because watching Rachel Reeves go through two heavyweight interviews today was one of the clearest examples I've ever seen of how twisted our media priorities really are. They didn't just miss the point, they actively gaslighted you into manufacturing drama. You turn on the TV expecting to see journalists holding power to account, but what you're actually watching is a rigged game where the rules change depending on who's sitting in the chair. The villain here isn't the politician, it's the media class that cares more about a viral soundbite than the economic reality of your bank account. They're wasting your time and insulting your intelligence. Stay watching because I'm going to show you proof of Laura Kuenssberg arguing against her own logic just to keep the fight going. But first, some context. In the spring, the government had $9.9 billion of fiscal headroom. It's basically a buffer. When the OBR came along, they downgraded productivity and wiped £16 billion off future tax receipts. That pushed the headroom down to $4.2 billion. Not a surplus, not extra money, it's a hole. That isn't complicated, and you'll see Rachel Reeves explain it over and over again with numbers, context and basic maths. And yet, watch what happens.
It's now on us. We've put everything out into the open.
Okay.
We've set the spending envelope for the course of this Parliament. We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean. Yeah, look, I'm not going to be able to write 5 years' worth of budgets on this show today, but what we have
I'm just
done...
saying, will there be more tax rises?
You're right, Trevor. There is no need to come back with another budget like this. We never need to do that again.
That wasn't true, was it?
Well, the budget this year was not on the scale of the one last year, but as I set out in my speech at the beginning of November, the context for this budget did change, and I did have to ask people to contribute more. And the biggest thing that happened between the spring forecast and the forecast that the Office of Budget Responsibility provided for this budget was a big downgrade in productivity. Now, the OBR have been really clear. That reflects the legacy of the previous 14 years, not anything that this government has done in the last 16 months, but nevertheless, that productivity downgrade means that they forecast tax receipts are going to be £16 billion lower, which is why I gave a speech at the beginning of November saying that the OBR downgrade has had big impact on the public finances, and it was why I would need to ask people to contribute more.
Well, let's unpack that. We'll come to the speech at the beginning of November and the OBR in a second.
Yeah.
But let's just deal with the simple fact that what you said last year turned out not to be true. The scale of the tax rises this year is not far off. Last year it was 40 billion, this year it's 26 billion. Literally, it just wasn't true. And
now, I could have just said, oh, I'll ignore the Office of Budget Responsibility. That's what Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng did, and look at the impact of that. That crashed the economy. It sent interest rates soaring, put pensions in peril.
Okay.
I've always said I would never take risks with the public finances.
You said in a piece last Sunday, that we wouldn't be looking in the rear-view mirror. You've already mentioned Tories twice in this interview. You mentioned them 26 times in your budget. So let's just leave the Tories to one side for a moment. Can we come to your point about the OBR? You said you want to be honest. When you spoke to the country on November the 4th, you warned that we'd all have to contribute to filling this financial black hole. But you already knew at that moment that the OBR had assessed that your plans at that point, let's be clear, the plans that you'd given them at that point would deliver a surplus of £4 billion. Why did you lie to the country?
Well, first of all, that was pre any measures, as they've been very clear. But if I was on this programme today and I said, I've got a £4.2 billion surplus, you would have said, and rightly so, that is not enough, Chancellor. That would have been the lowest surplus.
Well, never mind what I would have said. Why didn't you say to the country, you know what, I've got £4 billion, I don't think it's enough, I want to do some other things. Why didn't you make it clear that the OBR had already told you you had the a little bit more than £4 billion surplus on the plans that you had given them?
The way that the OBR forecast works is that they do the forecast before any plan. So this was pre any measures.
This is the state of political interviewing in this country. It's no longer about getting answers, it's about getting the clip. You saw it with Trevor Phillips just there. He sits down with the Chancellor and instead of dissecting the budget, he treats it like a murder interrogation. He interrupts her explanation of the OBR just to shout, "Why did you lie to the country?" Trevor Phillips plays back old clips and asks, "Wasn't that just not true?" And she explains the OBR downgrade again. He ignores it. She explains it again. He asks, "Why did you lie to the country?" She answers, and he asks the same question again, and again, and again. It's like talking to someone who keeps shouting, "But why is the sky blue?" when you're literally pointing at the sun. It's clear he's not interested in productivity downgrades. He just wants a confession. But Trevor is just the warm act. The real sleight of hand comes with Laura Kuenssberg. The contrast is almost funny if it wasn't so depressing. Reeves tries to explain the very simple economic concept, the headroom, the spare cash, dropped from 9.9 billion to 4.2 billion because of this productivity downgrade. Reeves is clear. She says the productivity dip wiped out 16 billion of potential money. I've said it a few times in this video already. I'm pretty sure you understood it the first time I said it. Does Laura accept this? No. She ignores the productivity drop entirely. She accuses Reeves of lying. She says, "You misled people in the run-up to the budget. The numbers we have now suggest that's not what you did." She hammers her. She asks her, was it a lie? She frames the existence of any surplus as proof that Reeves made up the black hole story. In Laura's world, at this moment, the OBR forecast is the smoking gun that proves the Chancellor is a fraud.
And borrowing.
Forgive me, Chancellor, we need to go through this in detail. I don't want anyone to fall asleep in their cornflakes, but I need to explain the detail of what this is about. It's not about your overall political motivations, and you reminding us of those this morning. It's about the specifics of what you said. Now, on November the 4th, you said very publicly the economy had less cash than previously thought. I don't want to use the jargon, but it's a productivity downgrade for people who've been following it. Your message was plainly, sorry, everyone in the country, there's less than we thought, so I'm going to have to put your taxes up. That was not entirely true, was it?
Yes. In the spring, I had headroom of £9.9 billion. The OBR numbers show that it moved around, but in their final pre-measures forecast, it was £4.2 billion. I clearly could not deliver a budget with just £4.2 billion of headroom.
I'm asking you to address this question directly.
Yes.
On November the 10th, you told the BBC, sticking to your election promise not to put taxes up would require deep cuts in spending on long-term projects. We know now you'd been told you had an extra £4 billion to play with. It wasn't true to say that, was it? Was it a lie?
I didn't have an extra £4 billion to play with. There was a downgrade in the headroom from 9.9 billion to 4.2 billion. But I was very clear in that speech on the 4th of November. I didn't want to have less headroom. I wanted to have more headroom. And the context of the budget, the biggest thing that changed was a downgrade in the productivity expectation going forward, which took 16 billion. Without that downgrade, that 4 billion would have actually been 20 billion. So I had to ask people to contribute more. In the end, I was able to keep that as low as possible with freezing the thresholds, not increasing the rates of tax. But I have asked people to pay more by freezing those thresholds for an additional 3 years. I recognise that, but I believe it was the right thing to do to be able to protect, particularly that investment into the National Health Service.
The Treasury very deliberately created the impression that you were going to have to put people's taxes up to fill a big gap in the public finances that simply didn't exist.
Now, watch the magic trick. This is where it gets morally bankrupt. Moments later, Laura is talking to Kemi Badenoch. Kemi takes the bait. She agrees with Laura's previous premise. She says that Reeves lied about the finances. And what does Laura do? Does she nod along? No. She spins it round. And suddenly, Laura understands economics perfectly.
She denied that she had lied about the financial situation on the way into the budget. Were you satisfied with her explanations?
Absolutely not. The Chancellor called an emergency press conference telling everyone about how terrible the state of the finances were. And now we have seen that the OBR had told her the complete opposite. She was raising taxes to pay for welfare. The only thing that was unfunded was the welfare payments which she has made, and she's doing it on the backs of a lot of people out there who are working very hard and getting poorer. And because of that, I believe she should resign.
But the official numbers from the Office for Budget Responsibility did show that there was less money coming in because they had downgraded the overall prospects. They did, though, say there was more tax. She said that's why she had to make some of the decisions. You don't accept that at all?
No, she could have cut spending.
Did you catch that? She does understand the OBR downgrade. She does understand why the headroom fell. She does grasp the basic economics Reeves explained to her 5 times in the previous interview. She just chose not to understand it when it was politically inconvenient. And that's the point. It's not journalism, it's just not scrutiny, and it's not tough questioning. When Reeves said there was a downgrade, Laura called it a lie. When Badenoch said it was a lie, Laura argues it was a downgrade. The numbers didn't change between those interviews. It's the same figures throughout. The only political value of understanding changed. And that right there is the moral corruption at the heart of British political journalism. It's not about informing the public. It's about managing narratives, shaping impressions, creating drama, and deciding, before the interview even starts, who gets the benefit of nuance and who gets battered with a script. We deserve better than this. We deserve politicians to be held to account for their actions, not force-fed a narrative because the host is biased or the panel guests are misogynistic pricks.
Now, the joke is in the City that she was really Rachel from accounts. Well, she wasn't even that. She was Rachel from customer complaints.